for today's cup of coffee. The beatings will continue.
He never started.
Until youngest kid improves.
He never started.
Which means that it's probably not going to happen.
It's not.
Hilo is twitching his tail on the microphone.
We're both freezing.
It's cold. I hate winter. I hate winter. Totally, completely, everything about it. And plumbing. Winter and plumbing. Hate that.
I would rather do that during winter, I guess.
So, what we're going to talk about today, there are shadow people, and we had alluded to that in the previous cup.
Yes.
And I found it's a cool website. It's called ParaRational.
I have never heard of that website, but that sounds really cool.
I hadn't heard about it, so I'm looking forward to exploring that. And a article by Cliff did not leave another name on that. 4 types of shadow people, what they are and what they want.
Okay.
So,
what do they want?
Since kid saw what could be classified as a shadow person, and we will get to that.
Even though it was a blob.
Yeah. And when I was a small child, I saw a shadow person. That was one of the first paranormal things that I experienced. And I mean, I was small. And it was, yeah. I didn't have enough, small kids don't have enough sense to be afraid of some of these things. And anyhow, it says that there's a good bit of confusion that, what a shadow person is and how to define them. And so Cliff says that shadow people are parts of our darkest fears. And then anybody can imagine waking in the middle of the night only to see something standing there in the doorway of the room. Mm-hmm. And that's sort of what happened with me. And it's a shape that's darker than the surrounding night. Yes. And the shape that seems malevolent, standing and watching you as you sleep.
Mine wasn't doing that at all.
I think that's called Google. Anyhow.
Damn it.
So, what is it? What did it, where did it come from? What did it want?
They're a type of spirit, type of entity. So,
he's going to give us a basic definition of what a shadow person is. It says that he's going to go over the commonalities of the entities that fall under the category of shadow people. And some common features are a shape that is generally male in appearance.
Okay.
They are aware of us and react to our observing them. The typical shadow person is tall, ranging from 6 to 7 feet. Now, this is typical. Very often, they seem to be wrapped in a cloak or a large old-fashioned cloak. Hats are not uncommon. You had mentioned something about the hats there several cups back.
Yeah, the Hat Man.
And their appearance has depth to it, unlike a shadow cast on a wall that is flat. Mm-hmm. Quite typically, they have no visible eyes, but some can have glowing red eyes. Shadow people are rarely reported to have spoken or tried to communicate. Physical objects seem to not matter to them, and they can walk through walls, and they can have a demonic shape and demeanor. And it says that, there's a list that encompasses the bulk of entities that fall under the very broad heading of shadow people. And because the classification of shadow people is so large, the motivations can be fairly wide-ranging. It's because of the cold. I'm going to blame that. It's because that my toes are cold.
We got the heater on.
We do.
I got a heater on in my room.
So often the apparent motivation of shadow people is tied to their source. Mm-hmm. Okay, we have lurking shadow people. And cloaked is just one of the types of shadow people you may encounter. And these kind are usually found around homes and very often around bedrooms. These are the classic shadow people that tend to be lurking. So this is the type that most people experience. They stand in doorways or corners just to observe. They must be really bored.
It must be.
And these types of shadows don't generally seem to have any intent. They just sit. Maybe they're just peeping toms.
Yeah, that's just
supernatural peeping toms.
They just sit and watch, and they're just like, "Hi."
Why do we need that? Why is that a thing?
Sometimes we need watchers, maybe.
Well, that's a different thing. Sometimes they will wander a location, following people or stalking them. Quite often they flee at being noticed, vanishing around corners, or simply going through a solid wall. Typically, these are classic human-shaped shadows, sometimes with a hat and often with the cloak or large coat. Less common is a vague figure, more like a human with a cloth over the sort of shape. So, encounters with this class of shadow people typically instill a sense of dread or foreboding. And if you will notice, with different paranormal entities, fear, and it's not necessarily a natural fear, it's almost like an abnormal fear, will come over people.
Well, I can sure as heck tell you that I did not experience any sort of fear with the one that I saw.
This class of shadow people seem primarily to be attached to an individual, and they've been known to follow these people from one location to the next. It says caution should be used with any of these entities, as a neutral intent shadow person can actually be a hostile one waiting for an opening. So we don't know if there's just an observer or they waiting for an opportunity.
Right.
That's
he who considered a shadow person.
No, he's a miniature Black Panther is what that is. Then we have dangerous or aggressive shadow people. And these malevolent, that usually goes along with aggressive and dangerous.
Yep.
And he says that he thinks all shadow entities should be treated with a high level of caution.
Yeah.
And even if a shadow person is not initially hostile, that could just be a ploy. And considering that we're dealing with entities that may have a much different perception of time than we do, they are very capable of waiting for humans to break down or have a weak moment, giving them an opportunity to act. It says if you experience a persistent shadow person, use a significant level of caution. If you're experiencing shadow people on a regular basis, you need to call somebody that's experienced in dealing with this. Okay, you've got visitors and transient shadow people, and there seems to be a class of shadow people that are less interested in what we're doing but have their own agenda. And they are seen typically going from one place to another and seem not particularly interested in the goings-on of the people that observe them. And it says, of all the types of shadow people, these are the least understood, as they do not linger and do not interact.
Yeah.
Okay, what if these are just people going between dimensions?
That's what I thought. Like, what if it's like normal human spirits? What if some of the shadow people is just them waiting to be put somewhere, or they're trying to find their way, so they're just wandering? Or
sort of a glitch in the Matrix, and we just see literally a shadow of one of the other
ghosts.
Well, no, I mean, it's a matter of parallel dimensions, and for some reason there's just like a window and we see just a snippet of it.
Could be.
So they may not be aware of us.
Maybe.
It says shadow figures as omens. Some sightings of shadow people appear to be omens or portents of something bad happening, much like the legend of the hellhound as a portent of death.
Okay.
And we've talked about hellhounds, and not thorough. We've talked about the black dogs in the past.
Yeah.
Similarly to the lurking type shadow people, these entities are generally associated with just one person and are a more transitory type of being, stopping after the event of tragedy has taken place. So it's sort of like Mothman, that his appearance would be before a tragedy or something like that. Then they've got haunting shadow figures. It says this is the last class of shadow people, and they are tied to the location and seem to haunt only that area. Several types of shadow people make up this large group of their and their motivations vary considerably depending on the type of shadow person. And so we've got the 4 main types, and that's the human-shaped ones that make up the bulk of the people sightings. Then we've got the black mass shadow people. And that's what you thought you may have seen there the other day.
Yeah.
It says less human in form, but still of that general size and black mass type of shadow people.
No.
Could give the impression of being a human figure, but more fuzzy or blurred.
No.
They can change in shape, forming more of a cloud. But the
That's not what
impression
that
is
one did.
always that an entity is there.
That's not what that one did at all.
Okay, and
It
this
looked like almost fluid, I guess you could say.
okay.
Like, it looked a lot like that one thing from this Photoshop tutorial that it was like have floating fluid or floating water or whatever. And it was like wiggly almost.
Right.
And like I said, it was like this weird shape.
Right.
But it wasn't fuzzy. I mean, I guess it was.
Well,
I don't know.
and
It
this is
wasn't
just
fuzzy. It was
his
just like-
understanding of it. But it was
And I
enough to
wasn't
where you knew it was an entity.
I don't know that it was an entity at all. It was just like, okay, my eyes must be playing tricks on me or something.
No.
Because I didn't feel fear. It was just enough to be like, what the fuck?
Well, a lot of
Did I see
times,
that?
right, and that startle response, usually, that's before fear. That's,
Yeah.
not necessarily
It
an
wasn't e-
automatic thing.
It wasn't even a startled response. It was just like, what? Yeah, I didn't have any negative emotion. It was almost like,
It's
it was
just odd,
yeah,
just
it was just
shocking.
I wouldn't even say shocking. It's just like, oh, okay.
Well, Cliff
That's
has said that it is his assertion that many of the black mass shadow people are former negative spirits that have begun growing in power and are losing their human identity. As they absorb more and more negative emotion, their sense of being human and who they were fades and becomes disoriented. And in the end, they become a form of following type of shadow people, demonic.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the demonic shadow people with red eyes. It's the next description. And I think that pretty much says it all.
Yeah, it's
The
a demon.
demonic shadows should be avoided at all costs.
Yeah?
Yeah. It says that they can vary widely, but usually retain a humanoid shape, but are often exaggerated in height, have wings or horns, or elongated fingers. They do not give the impression of being a normal ghost or sentient entity. And he says that luckily the demonic shadow people have a tendency to be tied to one location.
Mm-hmm.
Then there were other forms of shadow people that he mentioned that they don't fall into any of the other categories. And one that is more common is the old hag shadow person. We've heard of that before, that may go into incubi
Yeah.
or succubi in that category. It says these kind are less common and seem more alien than demonic. Now, I don't know, the people that had the experience with the old hag, I don't know. That seemed pretty demonic.
Yeah.
Other shadow entities, such as dogs, we've talked about those in the past, and it says there is likely a class of shadow people that actually are aliens, that simply present to us a shadowy form that can interact. It seems like I have heard of that before, and that would go back to the different dimensions type thing. And his final thoughts on shadow people, he says that they're nothing to take lightly, that they can appear for what seems like no reason and start meddling in lives in less than pleasant ways. If you're experiencing one that you cannot get rid of, he highly suggests contacting a professional and enlisting their assistance in ridding yourself of these entities, if at all possible. And then they're in this article, like I said, the links will be in the description box. He does mention a site that could have some suggestions on dealing with shadow people and protecting yourself from them.
Okay.
So, and then we have this snippet from Wikipedia, which I thought, should I include or should I not include? And I did include just because I thought it was hilarious.
Okay.
They're saying, again, they iterate what Cliff had said. You know, shadow person, shadow figure, shadow being, black mass is the perception of a patch of shadow as a living humanoid figure and interpreted as the presence of a spirit or other entities. That's funny, by believers in the paranormal or supernatural. Well, now, if you see something like this and you are not a believer in the paranormal or supernatural, what's your explanation for it?
Trick of the light.
Yeah, they'll make up some kind of something.
Eyes going out of focus or something like that.
And then they go on as far as history and folklore, which you can go and read that. It wasn't that that compelling to me. The scientific explanation was what interested me on this. And whoever had written this says several psychological and physiological conditions can account for reported experiences of shadowy shapes seeming alive. Sleep paralysis sufferer may perceive a shadowy or indistinct shape approaching them while they lie awake paralyzed and become increasingly alarmed. Well, yeah, that's the paralysis thing would alarm somebody.
Yeah, very much so.
And it says a person experiencing heightened emotion, such as while walking alone on a dark night, may incorrectly perceive a patch of shadow as an attacker. And here we have this. Many methamphetamine addicts report the appearance of shadow people after prolonged periods of sleep deprivation.
Yeah, it's called hallucination.
Psychiatrist Jack Potts suggests that methamphetamine usage adds a conspiratorial component to a sleep deprivation hallucination. One interviewed subject said, "You don't see shadow dogs or shadow birds or shadow cars. You see shadow people standing in doorways, walking behind you, coming at you on the sidewalk. And these hallucinations have been directly compared to the paranormal entities described in folklore." So I thought that was pretty funny that meth heads...
Method see shadow
It's
people.
not that they're tweaking, folks. They're just trying to get away from the shadow people.
Yep.
So I'm thinking, oh, my God, of all the explanations. And I'm sorry, if you're not in an area that experiences lots of meth, if you don't
in
have...
technicality, we're not either. It's just the town.
That's why I said in an area. In an area.
Yeah.
If you've never gone into a Dollar General and have not seen a tweaker, they flock to them like moths to a flame.
They're hilarious.
And we're not, honestly, we are not making fun of people who have addiction
they do
issues.
Need help. They
because
really do.
we have family. We have family. Everybody in this area has family. And so, but it is... I guess it's laughing in the face of adversity. Maybe that's what it is. But no, I do not think that meth is an excuse for seeing shadow people.
I don't know if he's considered... He's one of my aunt's sons. And, like, he got busted for meth. Making it right in her shed. So
that's not uncommon.
No.
That's...
So I don't know what he would be considered for me, but...
That would be a cousin.
Okay, there you go. Cousin. I got a cousin.
You got a cousin. So
who got busted for meth multiple times, cooking it in her shed.
Because
that's horrible.
We need treatment facilities. We truly, truly do.
Yes.
But now, the experience, going back to the topic, rather than meth heads, that's a separate cup of coffee. Yeah. That one's an espresso, dark roast for the meth heads. But when I was a tiny child, and I don't even know if I was the age of 2 yet, and I'm one of those weird people that I have very early memories that it's not me making stuff up. I have witnesses. They're going, yeah, they really did. I was there. And my father worked shift work, which meant that it was a rotating thing that he would work, on morning shift sometimes, then middle of the shift, and then graveyard shift, which is in the night. So being tiny child, I would sleep there with my mother. And one night, for whatever reason, woke up, sat up in bed, and there in the doorway was this dark form.
Ew.
And that it was so tall that it almost, like the head was at the top of the door facing, or there at the top of the door.
Yeah.
And I thought that it might be my father, and I called out for him, and there was no answer because he was asleep in the next room. And so the thing, I knew that it knew I saw, had seen it. And what was odd was the arm things parts seemed to be below the knees, abnormally. There were no shoulders that were defined. It turned, it was standing there in the doorway. It turned to the right and went down the very short hallway that was there in the house.
That's freaky.
And being a small child, sitting there going, Mommy, there's a monster in the doorway. And her response was, shut up, go back to sleep. Which is why when my children would come and say, I saw something, they was prayers going, holy water flying,
Holy water
plead the blood of
flinging.
Jesus, all of that.
Oh, praise Jesus.
There was
Hallelujah.
there was anointing oil, all that, because of what I had gone through and different things like that.
Yeah.
I was ready. I was battle ready. Still am battle ready. So they're real. They're very real.
Yeah.
I've heard quite a few people that have had encounters with shadow people. And it always freaks them out. I don't know that I have had, that was the only time that I saw that thing. Saw other things in my mother's house, but that was the only, as far as it presented as shadow, if that was what it was.
Yeah.
Don't know that I've spoken with anyone who has had one that was a stalker. So,
Okay.
anyhow, the shadow peoples,
Yeah.
they're creepy.
Yeah, the one that if it was even a shadow person, I don't know what the fuck it was, but it didn't freak me out or nothing, but it was just like...
It's like, oh, by the way, there was this black blob floating near the window.
It's just like... Okay.
And my immediate response was, if you have summoned something, I will kick your ass.
Yeah, I don't mess with any of that shit. Seriously, I'm just there, just vibing. And I was on the phone with my friend, and I'm like,
Yes, but that was
Okay.
that was the immediate
Party.
response from the mama. It's like, if you do,
it was just like my lack of response kind of shocked me. It was like, all right.
because
Whatever.
when we talk about this stuff, this is our life. We experience this stuff. It's not a daily thing that you have something paranormal or supernatural.
Yeah.
But when it happens, it's like, okay, let's be rational. But did you do something to call this to you?
No.
And,
The answer is
because I
no.
know what not to do. Kid, a lot of times, even with all my life experience and me telling him these things, he wants to do it and experience it for himself.
That depends on what it is.
And it's like, no, you go out someplace else and do this.
I still want to be a paranormal investigator, but...
Go down at your grandmother's and just take readings. We seriously need to do that. You really could go down there with a voice recorder.
Yeah, if Elijah would let me.
He's asleep most of the time. How's he going to know?
The room is filled with computers, which is... They're loud. Those
The
computers
rest
are
of the
loud.
house is not.
That's why I'm like... Okay, go into his bedroom or the bedroom Papa used to sleep in.
Right. Well, there's quite a few
And
other
just sitting
rooms.
there.
Yeah, I mean, there's quite a few other rooms of which, experiences.
But I need like total dead silence, like Nana's TV not on, Elijah and them, zip.
Well,
But like I need like
that can be
dead
arranged. That can be arranged.
Yeah.
So, there you go. There's your first
But if I hear
location.
if I hear like a growl or a scream coming through that thing, if I do the EVP recorder down there, hell no, that place is being burnt to the ground.
No, you can't do that. Whatever it is,
I'm salting the place.
well, you could salt the place. I mean, that it has been smudged numerous times. There's been, as far as it being blessed and sanctified and all that thing, numerous times. And whatever it is, it persists in being there.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just like, oh, okay, there it goes again.
But there's also entities that can be caused, like a form of poltergeist type of thing that can actually be caused by people and just their own energy
Right.
alone.
Right, but there's been other people that have experienced it when other people were not present.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that energy is going to be residual in either way.
Well, I mean, it's like Dad had an experience with whatever the entity was.
Mm-hmm.
I think Mom she may have had them, but in denial totally, completely.
Mm-hmm.
I can see her doing that. It seems like oldest kid and BB that there was something that was thrown across the room. I think it was a necklace or something that flew across the room.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I'm going to have to ask them about that because
Yeah.
I'm actually really intrigued.
Well, no, they had told me about that one, and when I was staying down there and thought that it was old lady that had opened the door, it was not old lady, and whatever it was, closed the door. I mean, I saw the doorknob turn.
Yeah, that's freaky.
It
freaky
did.
as hell.
It was just like, okay, because I laid there and I listened. When the door first opened, had called old lady's name, and nobody said anything. So the door slowly closed back. The doorknob turned, and I listened because old lady walked with walker and shuffling, and there was none of that. And the next morning, it's just like, okay, we've had an experience again.
Was there any footsteps?
No, none.
That's odd.
Well, no kidding.
That's really odd.
No kidding.
Okay. Speaking
So,
of odd, Milo.
shadow peoples. Have you seen them? Do you know somebody that has seen them? If you've had paranormal or supernatural experiences of any kind, encounters with UFOs, aliens, cryptids, if you've got local, regional, family myths, legends, whatever like that, just send us an email, cupofcoffeewithscream@gmail.com. And this stuff,
It's freaky.
it exists.
Yeah.
Truth is stranger than fiction.
Absolutely.
I think it was Mark Twain that said that.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a thing. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and most of all, subscribe.
Thank you very much for spending part of your day with us and having a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
Know that you are loved and appreciated. And we'll see you on the next cup. Bye.
Bye. Ooh.